These are 4 characters to avoid in the Season 5 mid-season patch, and these are going to be characters that are really hard to get to work in the current meta, have problems to do with the character's power level as a whole, or there are just other characters that do their job better. So we're going to talk about when you could play these characters if you ever can, when you should avoid them, and why you should avoid them. But our question of the day is, what hero that gets insta-locked do you immediately think you're going to lose the game? Let me know in the comments down below. Now before we start, I want to make it clear, I preached a million times that you can climb to Grandmaster and beyond on any character, even a goddamn toaster, but these characters make it a bit hard. And the first hero that we gotta talk about is my personal main, Doomfist. Now, unless your name is Zebra, no one is having success with Doomfist right now. Doomfist is in a really poor state. There are more things that counter Doom than pretty much ever, and in order to play Doom well, you have to not only play around a million different things, but you also have to hope that the enemy team just doesn't want to counter you and make you not play the game. Now, you can still, of course, get Doom to work. If you become really good at the character, you can essentially smurf the lower ranks, but once you get to whatever rank you semi-belong into, all of a sudden, Dooms are gonna get heavily targeted. Like, games are mad easy until I get to, like, mid-Grandmaster, and then out of nowhere, every game is just stack on stack on stack of counters. And while you can definitely play around these counters, there's many more tanks that just do the job easier. Any Doom player understands and knows that playing Doom means that your life is gonna be harder, and they mainly just accept that. Not to mention there's a huge failure rate with your Doom engages. Like, you have to go in on a first cycle to get your power punch, and a whole bunch of things could happen to you, like just getting randomly slept when you're trying to build up your power punch or whatever, and then you just die out of nowhere, and then you lose feed and you just lose the team fight. Or maybe you get that power punch, you go in for a really nice play, and then it gets Suzu'd, you get hit with a cast grenade. I mean, there's a million things that could just happen, and you're doing all this cycle and all this setup where another tank could just do the job way better. Like, Doomfist, honestly, is a character that feels like he's built for smurfing only, and in the current state of things, it's really rough to play Doomfist. I'm not gonna lie to you. If someone came to me and said, what tank should I pick up? I would definitely not suggest Doom. Even if you're really into dive characters, I would probably suggest like at least 3 other characters before Doom. And yeah, I do think that Doom is in a pretty rough state. So he's one of the characters that I would probably avoid, or at least only whip out under certain circumstances, most likely. Now, moving on to number 3, this is a character that I actively preach against playing a lot, and it's Bastion. I do understand that you can get value out of Bastion in certain situations, but the reality of it is, Bastion is a character that only works against a very, very specific composition. The enemy team is not playing any counters to you, they're not playing Ana to nade you, they're not playing any CC, or they're not playing a tank that can avoid you or deny you, then maybe you can get some value out of Bastion. So against very, very few character rosters, let's think like Zarya or something like that. And yes, I understand that you can swap to Bastion and play him in a very specific circumstance, but most of the time, if you're a Bastion main, you're signing up to have a much harder time than just playing like many of the other characters in the game. Like right now, Soldier is insanely busted. Why would you play Bastion over Soldier? It just seems like you're holding yourself back, and I understand if you're doing it for fun, but I would never suggest someone to be a Bastion main right now. I would never say, hey, you should probably pick up Bastion. In fact, I think he's probably the worst DPS in the game right now by a fair margin. He's the least flexible, he's very situational, and honestly, he is kind of a crutch in a lot of ways, where I feel like, yes, you can get some cheese wins at a Bastion, but are you really getting that much better at the game if you're just abusing Bastion every once in a while under these very, very niche set of circumstances? Nothing wrong with it, but I wouldn't suggest this character right now. Now, next up, we do gotta talk about 2 characters that are legitimately, like, super avoids. Like, the other 2, I think you could play them in certain circumstances, but these characters, I would probably just say you shouldn't play right now until they receive meaningful buffs or reworks. The first off being Lifeweaver, a character that is just in a sad state. I've talked multiple times about why this character is just really weak compared to many of the other characters in the entire category. Life Grip oftentimes is just like a less effective Suzu, and Lifeweaver has low damage, low heals, and overall a pretty weak ultimate, if I'm being honest. Everything about Lifeweaver is just way underpowered. I think they would need to decrease Lifeweaver's cooldowns by quite a margin, increase his damage, and then make it so there's a lot less uptime or awkwardness in switching between damage and healing. I think that that's a really weird thing that is on the character that just makes him feel clunky and not as effective. We even have some players like Defran literally giving up on the unranked to top 500 on Lifeweaver a second time even after his buff. And yeah, if Defran can't do it on Lifeweaver when it's the only character he can't do it on, yeah, good freaking luck playing Lifeweaver. I'm not saying that this character can't get any value. I'm just saying that there are a lot more competitive options to play. And if you're playing this character for fun and you just want to see how good or high you can get on this character, then that's perfectly fine. But be honest with yourself. You could 100% be a higher rank on any other support, most likely, than Lifeweaver on your best day. And that's just being real. Now, before we get to the last one, I wanted to throw in an honorable mention here, and it's Widowmaker, but only for a certain set of players. If you're trying to learn a character right now, or maybe if you're just trying to learn how to climb with hitscan, Widowmaker is not a character I would really suggest for you right now. Unfortunately, due to her state, which is seemingly in a state where I'm pretty sure that Blizzard is gonna dramatically change her one way or another coming soon, either buffer or changer or reworker. I think that there's just other hit scans that you can play in practice. Realistically, characters like Ashe might be a better fit for you right now, because I've coached a lot of Widowmaker players, and mainly what happens is there's like a long road, a lot of grinding, and you have to improve mechanically for a long time until you finally get to the level where you're like, I'm a god at Widow, I can hard carry these games. But right now, the grass that's on the other side, or that payoff, is not nearly as high as it once was with those huge Widowmaker nerfs that we got a while back. It's really like you're going to spend all this time and effort grinding really hard to become good at a character that is only okay even when they're being played very well. And I do think that you'd get more value out of other characters. Not saying that Widowmaker's unplayable, and I do imagine that she'll return in some state when they buff her somewhat, but I would never suggest a player to pick up Widowmaker right now. If you're looking for a hit scan to play, I'd probably suggest Ashe. Maybe I would play Sojourn or even something else like Soldier. Now the last character, and this is a character that I would legitimately just say don't play. Like, this character doesn't exist, just don't play it. And it's Roadhog. We've been waiting a long time for Roadhog to get that rework, and it still hasn't come through. He lost his one shot and he dramatically fell off the map in pick rate and win rate, and this character ultimately becomes a giant ult battery. On top of that, he is pretty ineffective at what he does. You have to pull out some miracles in order to get any consistent value on Roadhog, and if you're somehow managing to make Roadhog work, you can't tell me that you wouldn't be able to do way more on like a number of different tanks. This character can only really work when you are way above the level of your opposition and your opponents are blind and deaf, because really Roadhog is a fairly simple character to counter, and because of the one shot just not working the way it used to, the risk to reward just doesn't make sense. There's so many easy ways to counter you, and there's no way for you to sneak in one shots here and there that can make up for the fact that you were like a giant walking ult battery that doesn't take any space and doesn't demand any space. Really, Roadhog is just probably not the best character for you to pick right now. But this doesn't mean that he's completely unplayable. I think that on some of the maps where you can pull people into well, like Ilios well, is fine. Being able to pull people off the map is actually easier than it was before, so that's something at least. And there are some select compositions that I think Roadhog could be okay in. If your opponents are playing like Kiriko, Lucio, Winston, or something like that, then sure. I mean, you're going to get counterpicked right away, but there are very niche situations that I'm like, yeah, Roadhog could probably work. But most of the time, you should just not play this character. But let me know down below if you agree or disagree with any of my characters in the comments down below. Thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.